Pesach's Kiddushin Daf continues the Gemara's discussion of various different methods of Kiddushin, how we know which ones work, how we know which ones do not work, and comparing them to Gittin and which methods work with there and which methods do not work there. So now we're discussing Shtar, using a contract, a document, to be able to do Mekadosh Nisha. We saw in the mission that works. Gemara wants to know what the source for that is. Gemara is going to try three approaches. First, Gemara wants to say is a Kal V'chomer from Kesef, from the money. We see that Shtar has greater power than Kesef because Shtar works for divorce, while money does not work for divorce. Can't divorce an Isha by paying her. She can't separate from her husband by paying him. So Shtar has a greater power. Now, money works to do Kiddushin, so Kal V'chomer, Shtar, which has a greater power, should work to do Kiddushin. So the Gemara says that's not a proof. It could be that Kesef has a special power which entitles it to do Kiddushin that Shtar does not have, and that's that Kesef can be used to redeem Hektish and Meiser Sheni, while a Shtar can never be used to redeem Hektish and Meiser Sheni, as the pasuk says, V'nasan HaKesef v'kamale, this redemption only happens by giving money. So the Gemara therefore gives another approach. You could learn that Shtar works from Gittin, since Shtar works for a get, it works for a Kiddushin, because the pasuk links to two. It says V'yatza v'haisa, V'yatza min beisa, v'haisa l'shachar, the two are connected, and therefore it teaches me that a Shtar works by Kiddushin as well. So the Gemara asks, okay, I'll accept that, but if that's true, then you should also learn that what works for Kiddushin works for Gittin. So if money works to create a Kiddushin, so money should therefore be able to work to create a get as well. You should be able to divorce a woman with money. So Abaye says, no, that can't be, because then you have the same thing, creating a marriage and ending a marriage is what we call in kateger nasas and eger. The defendant can't become the prosecutor. He can't do opposite things. Versus when how could Shtar do opposite things, do both a Kiddushin and a get? The Gemara says that's not a kasha. The Shtar of Kiddushin and the Shtar of the get is not the same. You read it, it's a totally different document. Just because they're both a document doesn't mean that it's the same thing. So Gemara says, well, the money is not the same either. Here you're giving a coin, here you're giving a different coin. It's not the same money. So Gemara says, but it's not identifiable as different. There's nothing in the money that identifies it as being Gittin money or Kiddushin money. But the Shtar is totally different. It is an innately different thing. Now, the Gemara gives another source of how we know that you cannot use money for Gerushin, despite the fact that we have a V'yatza v'haisa link between Kiddushin and the Gerushin. That's because there's a pasuk in describing a divorce. It says V'chasav law. So you should write for her, and this law limits it. This only works here. That writing a document only works for that. Writing the document is the only method that works for the Gerushin. Money doesn't work for a Gerushin. So the Gemara says, well then, if you're using that to argue on the connection of V'yatza v'haisa, could use it differently. You could say that it's only writing only works for the Gerushin, but writing doesn't work for Kiddushin. How do you know to learn that writing only works for Gerushin and nothing else works for Gerushin? Why don't you learn writing only works for Gerushin and writing doesn't work for Kiddushin? How do you know which one to do? So because it says V'yatza v'haisa, we already learned that you can use writing for Kiddushin from the link between the two. So the Gemara says V'yatza v'haisa goes both ways. How do you know which one to use this drasha to combat the V'yatza v'haisa, to tell you that there is writing for Gerushin, and you use this drasha to tell me that there's no kesef for Gerushin? How do you know which one to do? So the answer is it's logical. This pasuk is talking about Gerushin. It limits the Gerushin, that there can't be kesef for Gerushin. The other pasuk, V'yatza v'haisa, is talking about Kiddushin. That is teaching me halachas of Kiddushin, and therefore that teaches me that there is kesef for Kiddushin, and that there is Shtar for Kiddushin. Gemara asks, Rabbi Yosef Glili in Mesachas Gittin uses this pasuk for a different drasha. So how therefore does Rabbi Yosef Glili know that there is no such thing as Gerushin with money? You can't use money for a get, for divorce. The Gemara says it's a different pasuk. It says Sefer Krisus. V'nasan la v'chasav la Sefer Krisus v'nasan bi'ada. So a Sefer Krisus, the only thing that could do Krisus is a Sefer. It can't be anything else. So the Gemara says, what are the Rabbanim going to do with that? They don't have that drasha. What do they need this krisis for? So they say that that's to teach that the divorce has to separate between him and her. There can't be any lingering connections or obligations between them. I have a brisa that says if a man gives his wife a get and he says on the condition that you don't drink wine or you don't go to your father's house, so if he says for a short period of time, like 30 days, okay, that's fulfillable condition, and she'll be free of him once she fulfills that condition. But if it's forever, can't drink wine forever, can't go to your father's house forever, that means he's always impacting her life. He's never separated from her. That's not called a krisis, and therefore that's not valid. So that's what they use the krisis for. So one says, then what's Rabbi Yossi going to do? He needs that drasha as well. How could he learn that you can't use kesef for Gerusha. So the Gemara says because krisus has two drashas in it, they could have just said kares. So kares would have been one drasha that has to separate between the two. Krisus, that teaches me a second limud. Now the Rabbanan don't have that drasha. They don't say there's a difference between kares and krisus. You can only learn one thing out of here. All right, now the Gemara goes back to all three things, kesef, shtar, bia, that work for Kiddushin. The Gemara wants to know, we try to bring a Kal V'chomer for each of them. We rejected the Kal V'chomer, but perhaps we could learn one from two. Perhaps from between two of them, we could learn to the third one. That would be what we call a tzad hashave. So Gemara says, no, there's something about each set of two that precludes you from learning the third out of it. How so? So the Gemara says, let's say shtar. You want to learn shtar out of kesef and bia? No, because kesef and bia bring a hana to the woman. Well, shtar doesn't bring her any hana, and therefore you could, if kesef and bia would say, you could not learn that shtar says. That shtar is true as well. Now, if you want to skip the bia, you want to say you can learn bia from kesef and shtar, so you can say, no, kesef and shtar work for a lot of kinyanim. People often buy and sell things with kesef and shtar, and bia is never used for an acquisition. And therefore, you would not know bia as well. Now, if it wouldn't say kesef, you want to say you should learn it of shtar and bia, that you can't do either, because shtar and bia are things which do create things bal karcha, against her will. There is a shtar works for a divorce, which can be given to the woman bal karcha, and bia works to consummate a yibum, which is also can be done bal karcha. However, since you never find that by kesef, you wouldn't be able to say this as well. So the Gemara says, what do you mean you do find by kesef? Found by an Maria who can be sold. So says, no, Maria is, it does not, that is her father sells her, is against her will. So says, no, that is not talking about marriage. Where in the concept of marriage, you don't find any bal karcha involving money. The Gemara now turns its attention to chuppah, which is when he brings her into his house or into the canopy, which is what we call chuppah, which is a symbolic bringing into the house. We know that completes the marriage, that performs nesuin. So Gemara wants to know, can that do kiddushin or not? Can you be mekadosh by bringing her into chuppah? So Rav Huna says yes, and the Gemara is going to disagree, but Rav Huna says yes, and he says it's learned from a Kal V'chomer, because chuppah is stronger in kinyanim than kesef. So if kesef can make kiddushin, chuppah can certainly make kiddushin. Now, where do you see chuppah is stronger than kesef? So here we have to have two attempts. Gemara first wants to say because by bringing into a chuppah, a bas yisrael gets the right to eat truma if she's brought into chuppah by a kohen, while being brought into kiddushin through kesef does not give her the right to truma. And the Gemara challenges that. The Gemara says midaraisa kiddushin kesef does give a woman the right to eat truma, as Ua has said. The only reason that we don't allow her to do that is midrabanan, because we're afraid she's going to give some of it to her father, or to her brother while she's living at home, and they don't have the right to do it. So therefore, as long as she's living at home, midrabanan, she can't eat truma. But midraisa kiddushin can eat truma. So the Gemara says no. Okay, so therefore you see from somewhere else that chuppah is stronger in kinyanim than kesef, and that's from the fact that it completes the kinyan, it completes the marriage with chuppah, it does nesuin, which kiddushin of kesef cannot do. Now, when we say completing, we mean completing the exit from the control of the father concerning Masi Yadayim, concerning Yerusha, and such matters. That is Rav Huna's Kal V'chomer. The Gemara is not going to try to reject this, and we'll end up with an extensive tzad hashave on this, where we don't learn from one thing, we learn from multiple things. So the Gemara first wants to say you can't prove from kesef the fact that kesef can do kiddushin that chuppah can, even if I accept your argument that chuppah is stronger than kesef, because kesef has a special trait which enables it to do kiddushin, and that's the fact that kesef can be used to redeem hekdesh ma'aser sheni, while chuppah cannot. So the Gemara says no, being able to redeem hekdesh and ma'aser sheni has nothing to do with affecting kiddushin. The proof is that bia can do kiddushin, and bia cannot be used to redeem hekdesh and ma'aser sheni. So Gemara says bia is different because bia has its own special midah and strength that it works for yibum. Gemara says no, but yibum can be what allows it to do kiddushin, because you see kesef doesn't work for yibum, and still kesef allows it. So therefore you got bia has a special trait, kesef has a special trait, neither of the one exists by the other, so neither of these could be what allows it to do kiddushin. We have to find what is the common denominator, the common factor that allows both kesef and bia to do kiddushin. The common factor is, the Gemara says, Rav Huna would say that they make a kinyan here and they make a kinyan elsewhere. The Gemara expresses it as kainin ba'alma v'kainin kan, it makes kinyanim. Now chuppah also does other kinyanim, therefore I should be able to include chuppah as learned from kesef and bia together. So Gemara says no. I'll show you a way in which kesef and bia have something that chuppah does not have. that they have there is a hana. Chuppah, there's no hana. Okay, so maybe there is a hana. So Gemara now goes to shtar. Gemara says, but shtar proves you don't have to have hana in order to do Kiddushin, because shtar works for Kiddushin, even though there's no hana involved. So Gemara says, no, shtar has its own strength, because shtar can do a gerushin. So the Gemara says, but doing the gerushin does not empower it to do Kiddushin, because you see Kesef and Mia can do Kiddushin, and they don't have that mila of being able to do the gerushin. So therefore, we need to find a common denominator between all three. Common denominator, the Gemara says, is that they do kinyanim ba'alma, and they do kinyanim here. So I should also include chuppah, which does kinyanim ba'alma. I should also do kinyanim here. So the Gemara says, no, all three have something about them that chuppah does not have, and that is that all three work a bal karcha. And the Gemara is referring to Kesef for an Amma Ivriya. The kinyan of an Amma Ivriya can be sold by her father. That is why the Gemara rejects Rav Huna's Kal. Those three have something special that Chuppah does not have. What is Rav Huna going to do with that? He says, no, you can't count Bal Karcha because an Amma Ivriya doesn't have anything against her will that works for marriages. There's no Ishus that involved that has Bal Karcha as far as Kesef is concerned. And you can't bring me Tzad Shaveh from other things which aren't involved. Gemara now says that Rava had two more reasons why he wanted to reject Rav Huna's claim the chuppah should work for Kiddushin, but Abaye answered both of those tainas. So Rava's first proof against him was that the Mishnah explicitly says that there are only 3 kinyanim and not 4. So that Abaye says maybe the Mishnah only listed the things that are mentioned openly in Psukim as kinyanim, but chuppah we were having to learn from Tzad Shaveh it didn't mention. Rava's second taina was that how could you prove to me from the strength of chuppah, from the fact that it could do a gemar marriage, it could complete the marriage, which kesef cannot. Chuppah only completes a marriage after a kesef, after a kiddushin. So you're going to prove a strength of chuppah in the fact that it could follow up on kesef. It can't do anything on its own. That Abaye said no, but chuppah could work after kesef. A kesef doesn't work after kesef. It can't do a kesef and then do nisun with another kesef. So that's where we see, following kesef, there is still a comparison between chuppah and kesef. And there, chuppah is stronger than kesef. Gemara now discusses how Kiddushin actually works. So there are 2 steps to it. There's the giving of the kesef, we're talking about kesef Kiddushin, the giving of the kesef, and the saying what this is for. So the Gemara discusses a brisa that talks about if he does both, or if she does both, I'll have a contradiction as to if they each do one. So the brisa says, how does it work? So he gives her money or something worth money, and he says to her, Harat Mikudeshesli, you are holy to me. Harat Moresesli, you're engaged to me. Harat Lilintu, you're now my wife. All these 3 work as a Kiddushin. That's if he did both the giving and the speaking. If she, however, gave him something, and she said, I am Mekudesh to you, I am Moris to you, I am your wife, that does not work. So the Gemara asks, there's a contradiction as to what happens if they each do one. The Gemara specifically focuses on if he gives and she says, what happens there. So the implication of the first case is that that is no good, and the implication of the last case is that that is good. So how do you resolve that contradiction? So the Gemara says, you go with the first case. The middle case where they each did one is no good. And just the last case was mentioned for no particular reason. It didn't have to be that way. So the Gemara says, okay, but it contradicts it. It has a contradictory implication. You can't just say it's nothing. So the Gemara therefore says, okay, so either you resolve that by saying that you read the Mishnah as follows. If he gave and he said, it's pasha that is good. If he gave and she said, that's as if, and then we continue. That's as if she gave and she said, it's the same validity, halachically, which is none, and therefore that's no good. Second answer is that really it's a suffix. If it's one-on-one, it's a suffix. If he gave and she spoke, it's a suffix, and therefore, midrabanan, we would have to be chayshish that is a valid kiddushin. Umar now discusses if he gave and he spoke, but instead of him saying that she's mekudesh to him, he said that he's mekudesh to her, meaning he reversed the language that he said. So Shmuel says, if you have kiddushin, and he gave her the kesef for the shava kesef, and he said to her the normal thing, harayat mekudesh, harayat mureses, harayat into, that is good, it's mekudesh. And we'll discuss why he had to add this line, which is obvious. If, however, he said, I am your husband, I am your man, or I am your engaged, there's nothing to worry about, it's not chal at all. Now, with a divorce, the same thing is true. If he gives her the get and he says, you are hereby sent away, you are hereby divorced, you are hereby permitted to all people, so that is a valid divorce. If he said, I'm not your man, I'm not your husband, I'm not your engaged anymore, there is nothing to worry about. Another one wants to know, what is the chiddush of his first line where he said, Harei at mikudeshes, that is good. So Gemara says, if you look carefully, he said Harayat Mekudeshes. He didn't say Harayat Mekudeshes Li. So how do we know he meant to him? This is what we call Yadayim She'in Mechichos, where we kind of know what he means, but he didn't really say it clearly. So the Gemara wants to say that this seems to indicate that Shmuel holds Yadayim She'in Mechichos are good enough. They are counted as Yadayim. So Gemara says there's the Mishnah, which we saw in Masechtas Nazir, that doesn't hold that way. The Mishnah says if somebody says, I will be, it counts as a Nazirus. And the Gemara asks, but maybe he's saying, I'll be fasting tomorrow. How do we know that he meant I'll be a Nazir? So Shmuel explained there had to be a Nazir standing there. So Shmuel clearly holds that if there was no Nazir standing there, even though it's Yadayim Shem Mechichas that he meant I'll be a Nazir, we don't know clearly. So Shmuel is saying you have to have Yadayim Mechichas. It's not enough to have Yadayim Shem Mechichas. So how come here Shmuel says that it's good enough to say Harayat Mekudeshes? Shmuel says no, Shmuel shortened the Lashon, but he really said Harayat Mekudeshes Li.